Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to Occult Explorers. I'm your host, Snappy, and I'm joined by my co-host, Dion. How are you doing?
Life is good. Life is good. We're still alive.
Amazing. Right? We're still alive. We're still surviving. Things have been
The
kind of
gin didn't get
interesting
me
for
this
you,
week. Oh yeah,
right?
the gin almost got me this week, but we're good.
If for those of you not in the know, Dion works in the entertainment industry out in LA, so the writer's strike is making his life a bit complicated at the moment, we'll say. But yeah, we're
Oh,
here. We made it, right? And you've survived your gin attack.
oh, that was just the beginning of it. But no. We got a lot of protractors of what we do. Because
Right.
we're talking about controversial subjects, touchy subjects. So there's different people who get triggered by it. In
Right.
comments, we get messages. So yeah, trigger warnings with this stuff.
As always, trigger warnings. We want, this episode, we're getting back more into these kind of gender issues. So if you're dealing with gender issues or dealing with issues of sexuality, maybe this isn't the episode for you, And just so everyone understands, we're continuing from where we left off. So last time we were looking at all of these various different groups that are associated with the goddess who are practicing either forms of spiritual androgyny or gender transition, or we're even undergoing surgeries like castration, or in the case of the Scythians who are removing the breast and other forms of gender transformation. Right, Dion?
Oh yeah, and there's different levels to it.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody approaches it from the same reason. As I did more and more research, we're going to have more episodes because there's so much information. And it comes down to the difference between those who are castrated and it's forced on them at birth, and then those who do that later on in life for spiritual reasons or for whatever reason,
Like
and
I
we'll
know
start.
I've been doing a lot of research into the Hijra of India, which is one of the longest continuous transgender communities. And I remember just reading that. I mean, it's getting better now in modern times, but for the longest time, there was a lot of societal pressure upon people who were homosexual or who were just gender variant to undergo these full transitions to become Hijra. And there's a
Oh,
lot of pressure, and a lot of people, like a lot of or at least it's suspected that many gay men would undergo this because they would achieve more social acceptability if they became a Hijra.
well, that's the thing. Many gay men don't identify as a woman.
I know that's the thing. It's kind of scary, right? You don't want to be
You
pressuring
know,
people into things that they don't want to do, but
and, and that's what I saw as I dug deeper. That there was everybody's not the same.
no.
Even be alternate, and they can put you all in the same area, but everybody is not the same in ancient times. Even
It's
then the politics. There's been 4,000 years of these politics going on. This isn't nothing new.
right. And, people have always been as gender diverse as we are now. So we're going to look at these ancients and you're going to see people who are asexual. You're going to see people who are, bisexual, who are homosexual, every kind of variant, various versions of trans identities. They're not using the same language we're using now. So we do have to be careful with this, but it's very interesting how many of these same kind of identities manifest just under different cultural milieus, right?
Yeah. So I wanted to find the oldest reference to that,
Okay.
to the
What
gender
did you find?
bending. And it's cuneiform. And this is with the myth of Ishtar. If you can go to our first picture of the day.
Right. Let's take a look.
And this is a myth of what happens is Ishtar is kidnapped and taken down into hell, to the nether regions. And none of the gods can save her because neither male or female can cross the 7 gates to get to where Ishtar has been kidnapped. And so the creator God creates a being named Abu Shu Namir. Abu Shu Namir. And it's a hermaphrodite being. And this being manages to pass the 7 gates. And there it's a creature, and I have a hard time saying the name. It's like or Gekisel, is this evil goddess that's kidnapped Inanna and put her to sleep. She's dead. And so Abu Shunamir goes down there, the hermaphrodite creature being, and the demon falls in love with him, or falls in love with her. And Abu Nushamir stills the water of life, wakes up Ishtar, and they escape. You know, and it deals with the 7 gates in the water of life and resurrecting Ishtar through this hermaphrodite being. And
so
what happens, though, there's more to the story, because the demon gets mad and curses hermaphrodites and trans people. Yeah, and that's where, I don't know if you could read that right there, because my eyes are a little bad.
Yeah.
Could you read a little bit of that?
Yeah. Yet I may soften her curse upon you, as spring arrives to banish winter. Those who are like you, my Asinu, male-bodied temple prostitutes, and Kalam, male-bodied priestesses, and Kugaru, and Kalaturu, lovers of men, kin to my sacred women, shall be strangers in their own homes. But if you remember me, how you were born from the light of the stars to save me, and through the earth from darkness and death, then I shall harbor you and your kind. You shall be my favored children, and I shall make you my priestesses. I shall grant you the gift of prophecy, the wisdom of the earth and the moon, and all that they govern, and you shall banish illness from my children. Whoa.
There you go.
That's kind of interesting. So it's both a curse and a blessing in this case. You're cursed, but you're also singled out as priestesses.
Yeah, and there's different levels of it. And you can see there's male body priestesses. And in another text, there's different styles of female to male priestesses.
Right. I imagine these are all probably very technical terms. I wonder if we fully know what it means, because like temple prostitute is an interesting kind of thing, and it says that it's male bodied. You know?
Yeah, and so there's female bodied ones, male bodied ones, male to female. There's a whole list in the Sumerian, and because of the deed that happened, saving Ishtar, it says, you were born from the light of the stars, and so you get you're special, favored, as priestesses for the goddess. And this is one version, and that's where the title you'll see of these videos, the Mātērheirei. That's the priest, the male priestesses of the female goddess, the mother goddess. And this is what they're talking about right here in cuneiform. But there's a shift. There's a transition, because these are people that choose this lifestyle. Remember, we showed the verse where Jesus talks about eunuchs that are born that way, forced into it, and people that choose it. And these are people that choose it. But there's like 4,000 years of intrigue I've found, political intrigue, where the people that are forced into castration and the politics behind that, with kingdoms falling, empires,
Right. Well, this is something that's kind of the dark history, because oftentimes a lot of these king figures would have eunuchs, because you could have strong male presence that represented no threat to you and your lineage in the sense of children, right? And the thought was they wouldn't sleep around with your wives, so it became a protection thing. And oftentimes you see these eunuchs in positions of administration. Is that right?
Well, imagine that the first group of priests may be homoerotic and have different sexualities and genders, fluid. This group right here we're talking about are castrated at birth. Nobody says that they're gay or homoerotic. Nobody says that. They're just forced into that. And so by having your testicles cut off, there's a certain feminization that happens. But that doesn't mean that person is not attracted to what they're attracted to. And that doesn't mean they can't still get it up, have sex.
Well, this is what's important, because because when we're talking about castration, we need to make sure that people understand that there are different, again, levels of castration. There are people who are removing the testes and the penis, but this is a
That's the
more of a
great
rare.
seal.
Yeah,
The great
that's more of
seal,
these,
they call that.
right? These are more of these people who are transitioning to become priestesses. But then what you see with a lot of these eunuchs are these people who, as young men, have their testes removed. And the purpose for this is to prevent them from going into puberty. It causes them to not age as much, like they have a younger features. They maintain that voice. Like, so you'll see this practice, it carries over, like we mentioned in the last episode, into Europe, where you have these people called the castrati, who are purposefully castrated in order to sing hymns. And one of the things I know from researching the castrati is a lot of them, like their parents forcibly did this to the children out of desperation or out of hopes that their child would become successful and wealthy and a celebrity, So like you were saying, these are young kids who have not hit puberty, right? These are either their parents or the state or the church is making these decisions for them.
Now imagine what you're talking about the last 500 years out of a 4,000-year history. Now these castrati before are administrators. It's because you can't get the royal orphanage pregnant, anybody pregnant, any of the princes or the queens. They're the bodyguards. Let's go to the next picture.
We also see like a lot of these castrati, or like these men, they're really good slaves because you can have sex with them and they don't get you pregnant,
Yeah. And the thing is, they can still fight. They still have people don't understand. They're just assuming that everyone in ancient times is all the same. If there's any gender fluidity going on, well, then that person's automatically gay. They're automatically have their testes cut off. That's not the case. Right. We're finding these palace administrators. Like, here's a term right there. Can you pronounce that?
Yeah, I think it says parakoimomenos. Sorry to our Greek friends out there. It says literally the one who sleeps beside the emperor's chamber. This was a Byzantine court position usually reserved for eunuchs.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Special position. They were the king's bodyguards. See, get away from all the softness. That's the other part of the presentation. That's the Mātērheirei. This is just regular guys who had their testes cut off and pushed around their whole lives, taken from their family, sometimes by slavers and pirates, and sold. They had a particular preference for different types of eunuchs in the ancient world too. They loved the Scythian eunuchs. The Scythians they had a particular fetish for them because they were taller. Wow. They were big kids, and they bring them down. So they took care of the king's needs, and this evolved from just being bodyguards and protecting the harem into being administrators of the provinces. Commanding armies, toppling empires,
it really reminds empires. Me of, ruling empires. That'll be exciting. But
yeah, they're basically the right hand man of whoever's in charge,
right?
And it's a systemic system. It's been going on for thousands of years,
right? It really reminds me of I did a lot of reading in the Middle Ages, and you'd have these people who were the attendants of the king, and they'd help clean him up after he go to the washroom and such, and you would think that this would be an awful job, but these people have the ear of the king. They're some of the most powerful people in the entire court, right?
Master of the stool. The master of the stool, because they collect the king's feces, and that's taken to originally it was taken to a shaman priest to observe, and then he would look through the king's shit, and he could tell omens, and just as the king's doctor could see his diet, and because you got to know, that's why regular doctors and regular folks and historians today, they just can't wrap their heads around the cultural anthropology of ancient times to understand that human beings and animals and nature it was a Frankenstein relationship. That things that they have ethics and standards for today, they didn't have that back then. People were fed all kinds of things, from arsenic to lead to anything. Anything and everything was compatible in the ancient world if it thought it gave you a magic power or brought you closer to a deity or god. And the kings were treated as gods as such, and they had eunuchs. And the eunuchs, the Byzantines, a lot. If you type into the Byzantium eunuchs, there's lots of videos out there that they get into so much palace and court intrigue with positions, and they become so powerful at a certain point. And it's like a job. It's like a position in society where a family knows that usually you would take one of your sons and you would castrate him, hoping that he could get a job in the government. It's like a government job, basically. Right. It's working for the man.
I also remember reading that at the height of the Byzantine Empire, one of the big issues it faced was this overly complicated administration system, that was holding them back, where they had to deal with all these layers. And it sounds like the eunuchs at their heart of this,
Well, they started out just protecting these divine beings, these people that thought they were divine and titles of nobility, special than everyone else. So they needed somebody special to attend to them that was different than everyone else, that they didn't have to worry about different families trying to take over, different bloodlines. And, these eunuchs would endear themselves to the palace because they would get them from a young age, traumatize them, and then show them some love. And then they'd be in the luxury, and they would be endeared to the kings and queens. They'd be his little family.
I also keep thinking, like, this is going to create a type of deep state in a sense, right? You're going to have these eunuchs who are operating regardless of what king comes in, or if the son takes over, or a nephew or a new king comes in, are they necessarily going to get rid of the eunuchs, right?
Well, eventually they have to pass laws, because I think it's Domitian and Nero married their eunuch slaves. Wow. In the Roman times, there's Roman eunuchs, there's Byzantium, your Middle Eastern, your Persian. I didn't even go into the Chinese one. If you just type in the word Chinese eunuchs or the royal palaces, next level. They don't have no rights. They kept that tradition up to late ages. They had that up into modern times. I think the last eunuch was up to like the 18 or 1900s.
Yeah, we'll have to do some deeper dive into the more Asian stuff at some point, because it's equally as deep, right? So wow.
They had less power, but there was a lot of intrigue. It was like the forbidden city. Even the emperor of ancient China was controlled by the priests and by traditions. He had to wake up at certain times, sit a certain way, eat with a certain fork or chopstick, or however you had to do it. Everything was controlled. There was no spontaneity. Wow. And behind the scenes, the eunuchs, see, if you had a connection to a eunuch or castrati in the ancient times, that was a political connection. You had the ear to the king, to the emperor. So the eunuch was very powerful, and they would get into it with the Temple of Mars, because the Temple of Mars are your, the Temple of Mars is your warrior class, and you get your priest class and your king class. And your king, he needs priests and warriors to be a king. That's why the most successful kings in ancient history are both priest and king and warrior. Right? They can fight and they can summon the gods. So there's always a competition.
I always think about how, like, the military, especially in the Greek and the Roman worlds, have their own deep mystery cults, and that are engaged in these, these secretive homosexual rites and all this other stuff that's not privy to the outside world,
Temple of Mars, and they encouraged it until finally they passed laws, because in battle, having a homoerotic relationship with the person next to you is going to guarantee success. We're going to fight for each other. We're going to fight, to the death. And we're going to protect each other. We're going to get along. That was one until later. Different emperors said, "Nah, we don't want no one. We don't want that." But traditionally, that was encouraged. It was like, hey, if you all bond, then you go into battle as a unit.
Well, famously, that's how it was in ancient Sparta, right? Which kind of set the precedent for that way. But you see it across the ancient world. A lot of these relationships are encouraged. I even think, like, remember when we were talking a few weeks ago about the Knights Templar, and the Knights Templar have a form of this kind of home, and it's so wild. They call it like protective homosexuality to protect these men from the greater sin of sleeping with women, which was even worse and could result in children. It was your duty as a brother to go and have sex with your fellow brother to prevent them from sinning. This was like a powerful thing to them. And it's like, holy wow,
Help your brother out. Come on.
Right? You don't want him to fall to the charms of women now, would you?
Right. Well, from here, we're going to jump to a woman, a very powerful woman in ancient history, because we've been a lot of talks about these powerful, here you go, right there, Zenobia. And this is the queen of Palmyra, the Palmyrene Empire. And this is about 270 AD. And what made her special is that they said she talked like a man, wore trousers. She only mated with the king once or twice a year just to try to get pregnant. And what she's famous for is she kept a stable of male eunuchs. She didn't have ladies in waiting. She had male eunuchs and an army of them, and she went into battle with them. And she was famous for this, the Queen of Palmyra. And so finally, Rome she fights with Rome eventually, and they turn on her. And when they capture her, they parade her through the city with a bunch of jewels and stuff on her. They dress her as a woman. It's like to make a joke of her, because she normally dresses like a man to kick their ass. And she preferred her male eunuchs. And these male eunuchs, it's like a holdover of the Gali priests.
Right. So it brings up so much speculation, because again, like, we don't have the concepts in the past of like trans men, but this sounds like a trans man,
Well, she is a woman. She's a woman that hangs with trans men, and that's one of her trans priests on the right. It's supposed to be, and it's hard to see because the picture's so small. But if you could zoom in at home, both of the right hands are throwing up Baphomet.
Oh,
even though they worshiped the Baphomet then, that had nothing to do with that. But it's funny that both of them got that, symbol on the right hands. And she has, you could see a dog in there. And the gods that they worship was Baal, because I talked about Baal before last time. Bel, Baal and the dragon. Was one of the male gods there.
Right. And that's that was a story that didn't make it into the canonized Bible, but was popular among some early Christians. So
yeah, with Daniel, he conquers the dragon by putting this pellet. It's like a cake that has pitch and gall and different things to subdue and tame the dragon. Because part of what we're talking about today is taming the dragon. So there's more to Zenobia.
Sorry, I got confused there. No, you're right. That is in Daniel. It just gets reinterpreted. Sorry.
Well, no, it's in a different taken out. It's in a different canonical version that's taken out. It's non-canonical. Yeah, a version of Daniel. And so Zenobia, there's more to her story, because I started to research and I'm like, whoa. So I started to go into Islamic sources and finding out, other names. What's the etymology behind her name? Another version of her name is Septimia Bat Zabai. And you can find that if you just, even on Wiki, it'll show you that. And that means daughter of seven, twice.
Oh, wow. That's pretty esoteric if you ask me,
And the word is Zabai with the Zabbai, or Sabai. It's a certain root of a word that, will be explored in different videos, like Sabazios, Sabatini, Saba. And that's her name.
That's related to these gender priests, right? Because Sabazios, that's related to the what is that? What's that god? It's gonna bug me. Anyway, there's a dying and rising gender transformation at the heart of that.
Yeah, this is where you get into the Attic stuff and
Yeah, Addis. That's it.
Adonis.
Addis. Sorry.
Yeah,
Addis and
yeah.
Adonis. Sorry.
And that's where they're practicing the stuff. If you can go to the next picture,
Right.
this will show you the empire that she was ruling at the time, because she would go into battle.
Oh, wow.
And it encompasses a lot of the mystery sites that we're talking about. When we're talking about all the different stuff. And where she was at, Palmyra, combined, it was the end of the trade routes. It was a lot of the trade routes all ended up there. And she was,
look at this. Like, just to put this into perspective so people understand, there's Egypt that she has. Okay. She doesn't go all the way down to Mecca, but she's got a lot of Arabia. You have all of Palestine. You have parts of Lebanon and Syria. Like you were saying, these are all of the mystery sites that we've been examining.
And she syncretizes a lot of different subjects in the religions into a mystery religion with her eunuchs. It goes into battle, and like I said, her name means daughter of seven twice, and there's other versions of her. There's a Muslim scholar I talk about every now and then, Al-Tabari, because he gives up a lot of the information, the secret stuff in Islam through his commentaries. And he calls her Al-Zaba, and the
sounds
Zaba
again
Saba
like
root.
Sabak.
Yeah, and there was a horse. Muhammad had a horse that was Saba, because I'm into the donkeys and horses there. But also, it means, to Al-Tabari, he says it means hairy.
Oh,
the term is hairy.
Now we're getting into our Balkans, right?
Yeah, there's more to the story. And so when he talks about Al-Zaba, his version of it, because a lot of the version before, which she's a Zenobia, are Septima Bat Sabai. Those are the Roman versions. Well, in the Muslim version, she's really hairy. And she has her eunuch guys, our eunuch priestesses, and she don't have ladies in waiting. She only has a couple of young girls with her, it says. And she wears trousers and likes to fight. There's a story about a person that she's battling, and it's a king she wants to get rid of. It's a fellow king there. And they're from the family of the snake. Their last name is a snake family. And so what she has to do is bleed him. The priest that she consults, the oracle, and they tell her they got to bleed this guy out. And so it's a famous story that she has to seduce him first. And so he goes to meet her. And what she does, this is what Al-Tabari says. She lifts up her skirt. And Al-Tabari says that she has braided pubic hairs down to her knees.
Oh, wow.
That's why they called her hairy. She had hairy legs as well. And he says, nah, I'm not going for it. And she captures him and bleeds him out and gets him drunk. First she gets him drunk, and then she ties him down and collects. She has to collect all of his blood, and not a single drop can fall on the floor. Otherwise, she won't have immortality.
Amazing.
And
that's so crazy. What a good story.
And the thing with the hair and the Al-Zaba and the root in Islam, there's more to it. Even there's a version of it with Muhammad, which is a Zainab bint Jahash. And there's even the tears of Zainab. Like if you were to go up at the top of that map where those fish pools are, one of the fish pools, they call it the tears of Zainab. And this is one of Muhammad's wives. And what happens is originally it's not his wife. It's a son-in-law's. He adopts a son, and the son likes this woman, Zainab, and she doesn't like him. And she even complains when she has to marry him. She says he's sexually impotent, And so Muhammad goes over to talk to her one day. And it says that in the myth that this hairy curtain gets revealed or blown open by the wind, and he sees her and he falls in love with her. He's I got to have her. And but the thing is, she's not only is it's his son-in-law's wife, she's also his niece or cousin at that. And he goes back and his mind is frazzled, and like always, the angel Jupiter comes to him and squeezes him in the middle of the night and tells him, "Why can't you? You should just have what is yours, Muhammad. Take it." Like all of his other wife's stories, it's all the same. So he goes and he changes the law. And what he does is he disowns his son-in-law. He says, "You are no longer my son because I want your wife." And he takes her.
For those who remember the last time,
it also deals with hair in there because the hairy curtain is part of it. A hairy curtain has to be revealed. Allah reveals the hairy through the wind, the power of the wind.
That's wild. And also, I just wanted to remember, so for everyone who doesn't remember, we did an episode where we kind of talked about some Arabian stuff, right? And we were talking about how Muhammad did this with the slave girl, Marie the Copt, where he changes the law so he can marry her, even though God at one point tells him not to. And then again, God comes back and says, "No, I've changed my mind."
Yeah. And I think the lady in waiting for Zainab is Maria. She has her own slave girl in her too. I mean, just saying. And the Zainab root in this relationship with hair and queens, there's more to it. Because we talked about in other episodes too, we talk about Queen Sheba and Suleimani.
Right. Doesn't she have like hairy legs or something? I remember reading that.
Yes. And she's Bilqis, the queen of Sheba. And Sheba is like 7. Sheba in Hebrew 7. And she's supposed to be at the bottom right down there where Yemen is. And see, in different myths, the queen of Sheba is either Yemen, Ethiopian, or Egyptian, depending. Because to them, they didn't know which is down somewhere that way. That's just how they see it in their things. Like Libya, is just all of Africa to them, to the Romans at a certain point. So the queen of Sheba. So Solomon hears that she has hairy legs and donkey feet. And remember, Zainab.
Satyrs, anyone?
She's her father's of the donkey. She's bint Jahash of the donkey. And so Solomon hears about this and he's like, well, he wants to figure this out. So what he does is he builds a mirrored floor as the stones polished, just like how the capstone of the pyramid used to be polished and reflect light. And she comes, the queen of Sheba, and that Sheba is Saba. This is the same root. This is how these scholars are connecting these stories to these roots, the etymology and the different elements in the story. And she walks onto the thing and she thinks it's water. So she pulls up her skirt, Queen Sheba, and he sees her hairy legs and her donkey feet. And he goes, listen, I want to marry you, but you got to shave your legs. Because in this version, Suleimani is Muslim. King Solomon's got to be Muslim. And he tells him, you got to shave your legs because in Islam, they like shaving. I remember when I went to Africa, they told me to shave my underarms. He's like, dude, you smell so bad. White boy smell. Shave. You need to shave your hair and your body. That'll help with the smell. And I'm like, I ain't shaving yet. And so this is what she tells Suleiman. She said, I can't shave. A razor has never touched these legs and never will. And that's when he tells his court magicians, like, hey, we need a depolatory, when you deplete that cream.
Yeah, like your nair, your hair removing nair.
And they come up with something. And then they get married. And this is a Sheba, a Zaba, Batsabai, Zenobia, deals with these certain roots and hairy legs and eunuchs. And she had a whole group of eunuchs with her as well when Sheba came, the queen of Sheba.
Wild.
Since we have that map, we're right there. One of the areas, to the left there, the green, is Libya. We talk about Libya at different times. A lot of things that take place there. It says
Roman Empire in Africa here. Yeah.
Yeah. Roman Empire, huh? You want to go to the next picture. Yeah. We're going to look at some coins. And these are coins from...
like hearts.
Yeah, look like hearts. They're supposed to be seeds. Sliphium seeds. The magic earth Sliphium.
That's where the heart symbol comes from the Silphium, right? And this is kind of like an ancient aphrodisiac. It's also a somewhat lost plant because it was over harvested to near extinction. Now, scientists do have specimens, and we have found various wild varieties, but we're not 100% sure if it's the same because of, changing in cultivation and other stuff, right?
Yeah, because of the husbandry and different agricultural practices. And this is an example of husbandry and agricultural practices in ancient times, because this herb was in use for a lot of reasons. And people in modern times say it's related to parsley or fennel.
Yeah, it is a type
of
wild
shape on the seed. Yeah, and had a heart shape on the seed. And these coins are from Cyrene in Libya, which is special. This little town there has different names: Apollonia, Cyrene, Susa, Pentapolis. A lot of myths and things take place there. It's not too far from the Oracle of Amun in Siwa, Libya.
I also just think Cyrene, right? Sirens, and we know that mermaids are essential to the mystery rites, so there's something going on there. Right, let's stick the next picture.
Oh, and you notice it almost looks like that, like a horse's hoof. And so the Sophium was used for a lot of different purposes. It was a sought after herb in ancient times, and here's where we're going to get into taming the dragon. We're going to talk about different botanical substances and essences and practices that have estrogenic effects. And this is not the world of the castrati. This is the world of the Mātērheirei. This is the world of men that want to feminize for the goddess. And
right. So these are these non-binary and what we would call non-binary and trans women.
Yeah, so trans women, and the Sophium is a herb of choice. It has estrogenic effects, it says, in some of the mythologies, as well as it's used for snake bites. Because part of the research methodology for studying these estrogenic herbs in ancient times is I looked for herbs that treat snake bites that are used in the ritual mythologies of these different cult centers, and that are used in menstruation or menopause. And then lastly, you type in the word estrogen, and that comes up too with all those, if you can get all those dots in a row. And so in Cyrene was special. It's like Ashkelon, Right. We talked about Ashkelon.
Yeah, that was that's
like the shape of Ashkelon.
Yeah,
keep that picture right there.
Yeah. Actually, yeah, we'll go to the next one.
No, keep that picture. Keep that picture. All right, well, there you go. The next one. So this is Cyrene right there. Apollonia. This is a fort there. And it looks like Ashkelon. It looks like the horse's hoof. It looks like an agape table. It's that this is more clear design of what of agape table as a city, as a fort that we were talking about in the last episode. And so
because when we looked at Ashkelon, Ashkelon was two of them, right?
No, it's that kind of that shape. It's kind of like this shape. And this is and I started looking into the terms of it. There's actual term for it. The semicircle bastion is one of the terms for them. And there are four bastions because there are four. Its compartment in the back is around it. And so these are sea forts. It's a type of a sea fort and a horse's hoof, but the mythology behind them deal with they're connected. These are connected Phoenician ports, and they have mythologies that deal with the Phoenician mythology as well, and so what I noticed at Cyrene, they got a lot of herbs that are estrogenic that they were growing, because in ancient times they had a lot of special things that come from there. Like in Ashkelon, they had the mollusk, they had dog cemeteries. Well, here they had a dog cemetery too. Not only the dog cemetery, but what's his name? Cyrenius of Cyrene, I think is his name. He wrote a book on dog breeding out of here. And this is where St. Mark is supposed to have been born as well, in Cyrene down here. And so, there's a lot of connections down here. And part of it is the things they were growing. They had olive groves, pistachio groves, carob groves, but central to the estrogenic herbs, they had the psyllium, which is big, They had geranium, oregano, lavender. You can have red clover, virgin's mantle, which Ariel let me know that's called Abraham's bush. You know, there's nard, spikenards, and all these are estrogenic.
And you know, I also
Yeah.
remember now, like that I'm thinking about it, I remember reading about Cyrene as a place where they were growing incense, and they have all of these incense groves. And then they would talk about how these flying snakes that would protect the incense groves, and the Greeks couldn't go there and get this stuff. They had to rely on the Africans and the Carthaginians to bring it to them.
Yeah. This is one of these special places, you know, of goddess worship and trans centers, all the elements there. Let's go to the next picture.
Right.
Oh, that's Ashkelon right there. You can see how these shapes are related.
So like I was saying, right? So it's a double. So you get the double horseshoe effect with this one.
You know, and it's like go to the next picture. You can see an agape table. I think I threw it in maybe.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's the semicircle with the raised platform in the middle. It's like almost like a horse's hoof too. And the horse's hoof we're mentioning because you know, we talked about in the last episode, we talked about the horse's nose, Ashpenaz, who was the prince of the eunuchs. And sometimes we talk about Argot, which is behind the horse's ankle, above the hoof. You know, Hippomanes, and then we talk about
the Argentaire, right?
Premier, which is the Argentaire. You know, pregnant mare's urine.
Yeah, that's a big one
with the horse symbolism.
People who are transitioning to female, right? That even to this day, a lot of medication is still based off of mare urine. So,
if you want to go to the next picture, my friend, there's that little symbol again, that horse's hoof.
Doesn't it remind you of kind of a peace sign too?
Of a peace sign, of a Sophium seed, of a horse's hoof, it could be Ashkelon, it could be Apollonia. And those things have these elements in common. You have trans priestesses. These are elements of the trans priestesses, you know, and centers of the trans priestesses, you know, because it's that pregnant mare's urine that they were fermenting also with milk and drinking, the Scythians. And they talk about that. And that's estrogenic, you know, 100%. That's what they're using in modern times. So let's go to the next picture. Here's another one. Here's another thing that were growing there at Cyrene is the Kermes oak.
Oh.
When we talk about the Kermes oak was the one there in Israel where they get the red dye from that Kermes. That's where you can get the manna, that sweet manna that they eat. And, you know, and I know there's more to the story with the Kermes, you know, and it is estrogenic. It's
always associated with the hairy people, right? Because they're always also described as red, and there's always this thing where they're rubbing red stuff into them. You know, it may cause people to produce testosterone or something.
Well, no, I think it's estrogenic. I looked it up. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
And it's used in different ways, you know. So I asked the AI. For this one, I asked the AI. I wanted to know. I said, AI, is Jesus the crimson worm? And it said, yes, Jesus is the crimson worm. And if you go to the next picture, I'll show you what it told me. And because, you know, I talk about the Aramaic phrases in the Bible will always have a dual or twin story going along with it, with the same symbologies.
There's always a pun going on, and they're always magical phrases.
Yeah, and then you'll find a story somewhere else that'll parallel the same elements and same phrases. Right. And so the AI said, yeah, that happens here. And it showed me why Jesus is the crimson worm. And it's because when he says, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, that phrase is tied to Psalm 22, where it says, my God, why have you forsaken me? And it says the same phrase. And then below it says, but I am the worm. And the AI says that's because he's the Kermes worm. Because it's symbolic of the Kermes worm bleeding on the tree, that snake of the Kermes bleeding on the tree. And after 3 days, it turns white. After the blood is washed and anointed, it turns white.
Oh wow!
And that's the instead this is the crimson worm. He's
you're cutting
on
out.
the tree.
You're cutting out, Dion.
Oh, okay.
So can you just repeat that just so that everyone can hear? Because it was pretty deep.
So what it says is that because Kermes bleeds on the tree, it's a snake that bleeds on the tree, like the cross, and after 3 days, it turns white. It's like when you're anointed with the blood, and after 3 days, you're white again, it turns full. And that's the AI said. It was showing me, this is what it said, and it said that Jesus is the Kermes worm. He's the Kermes, the crimson worm in the saint. And that it was it gave a whole long thing. It's like, I was like, oh, really? You're right, it is. Oh, I see I'm cutting out there. So yeah, if you want to look that up in the future, it's Psalm 22, the crimson worm, Kermes, and the effects of Kermes in the body and the relationship with that with mana, because in the desert, that's supposed to be the mana that they're eating off the trees.
Yeah, so the Kermes is the mana, right? What was the mana again? Can you explain that?
Well, during the Exodus in the Bible, there was no food. They were wandering for, I think 40 years, and they were following a cloud in the sky, like the smoke cloud that would move in the sky, and it said it would bring a mana. And it's supposedly it's the mists in the mornings that bring the dew of the mana on the Kermes oak trees that produces this, which is this little thing. And it's used as the red dye as well, because this red dye was complementary with Syrian rue red dye, which is harmala, and other red
that
dyes.
sends off such red flags for me talking about the dew, because in the Egyptian you hear all this stuff about the dew on the lotus flower and consuming of the dew, and then you see that also in the Vedas and in some of the agamic literature where they're talking about ingesting the dew off of these flowers to grant them like immortality and stuff.
yeah. So let's hit the next picture.
Common theme, interesting. Okay.
Nope.
More medicine.
Spatulado from spatu corto. That's St. John's wort.
Right.
And St. John's wort is mixed with oil, olive oil, and they call that spatulado. And it's a remedy in snake bites. Big time for snake bites, for menstruation, menopause, and it's estrogenic.
Right. I've also heard like some people use it for dream inducing and to like counteract some of the negative effects of cannabis. And cannabis itself is an estrogenic,
Yeah. And it bonds to the same receptor sites as cannabis. And it's used as an antidepressant in Europe as well. Because serotonin is part of it. Because these estrogenic herbs that deal with menopause and snake bites also deal with the receptor with serotonin.
Right.
I mean, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know how it all works, but I'm seeing these same words over and over when I keep researching some things. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for snake bite remedies, menopausal remedies. They're used in mythic or folkloric rituals. They're in the Levantine area, or Turkey or Egypt, and they're estrogenic. A lot of them are estrogenic, these popular herbs, even from oregano, like even lavender is said to cause breasts on young boys. If you introduce lavender at high dosages, prepubertal, you can introduce breasts.
Wild.
And so
Intense.
These are herbs in ancient times, because I know the modern doctors in the trans medical community, that's a whole nother world. I've done a lot of research into that, and there is the dark side into that too in modern times as well. It's financial.
Yeah, of course, right?
Anything it's a wild world. It's a pretty deep world.
Yeah. And there are a lot of people don't have access to proper medication, or Medicare. So they're still doing a lot of these herbal remedies too, and people get things like serotonin syndrome. Some of these girls, it's kind of scary,
And that's why we're bringing this up. And what I was going to say next is, don't mix this stuff. If you're already going to a doctor transitioning, you don't want to mix this stuff, because you get side effects. Because this is what I'm showing you is the way that they could have done it naturally in ancient times. along with castration, different forms of castration, but not everybody was castrated. So there's different levels. There's so many different levels with this,
Right. We often see
these
those
herbs.
gynomorphs and those andromorphs, these figures of these female figure with a penis. You see that statue often with Aphrodite with a penis. So
And there's
not
the
all
male
of them are
Aphrodites.
castrating.
And there's the male Aphrodites, Aphroditus. And you'll see the
Right.
cypress, and they found different statues, and these are the male Aphrodites. And so that's what this is kind of about is, there's different levels. There's different ways you could take it. And so let's go to the next picture.
Well, it just makes me think like people today are just as complicated, right? And you're going to have just as much gender and sexual variation. So you're going to have just as much gender and sexual experimentation, right? None of this should shock anyone.
Yeah. Spikenard, which is used to anoint the Messiah's feet, the anointing oil, nardus, is estrogenic.
Wow.
One of the main formulas in the myrrh bearers elixir.
It makes sense now why someone like John or Jesus is so pretty in the face, let's say.
and they would do these 6-month anointing rituals with special herbs, like the one for Daniel and Shadrach was 3 years. Some you can see they
talked about that
6
last
months.
episode, right? They were going through that whole process.
And
I know, like with the Hydra, with modern Hydra, they go through a 40-day castration process where they're usually also like drinking tons and tons of opium-induced, like opium-laced milk, and it's an intense process these people go through.
So let's hit the next picture.
All right.
Oh, here's Rose Autumn. So taming the dragon. It's if you want to tame the serpent, it's the rose. For those who have ears to hear, Rose Autumn is distilled through steam and it's estrogenic.
I never knew that. That's amazing. You do see rose water used a lot.
Yeah, serpent with the rose.
All right.
Let's hit the next picture. You said poppies. Well, at Serenity, it was a poppy stronghold. They were growing poppies there too. And that was part of the formula. The compound was
this is the strongest painkiller known to the ancient world. So if they're doing castration, they're going to be using opium, I hope.
This is all. These herbs are Cyrene. Except for the spikenard. Now, the spikenard was imported, and there's some that they were getting from India or Persia. Some of the herbs. They're big in Ayurvedic medicine. But if you want to go to the next picture, wormwood, absinthe, wormwood, Artemisia, wormwood in the Bible. Artemis says Artemisia. Yeah, they had that there too. And guess what? It's estrogenic.
Oh, I never knew. I've heard all these claims that it's hallucinogenic, or at least like very, very slightly. But I never heard it was estrogenic.
Well, that's thujone, the thujonenic. But it said estrogen. It says it grows there. This is one of the things that are growing at Cyrene. And it deals with the Bible and deals with prophecy and Artemis, the goddess.
It seems pretty on point to me, And the thing with Artemis is, this is a figure, right? They're described as that, like masculine type of woman, right? They are a woman, but they have the short hair. They're muscular and strong. They're an active warrior. They're a hunter. They're always a perpetual virgin,
Yeah, Let's hit the next picture.
Wow.
We're all in Cyrene. Oh, here's another thing that they had in Cyrene over there. Because remember, we're in Libya. This is the Libyan, the horned viper. We know that this is used in compounds, used by somebody. Doesn't somebody named Medea come from Libya in some myths?
Yeah, she comes from Colchis, right? She's the queen of Colchis.
But there's a connection to Libya somehow. Sometimes
Colchis
she's the
is in Libya.
daughter. She's the daughter of the king of Colchis, but they connect her to Libya in different myths.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and the snakes. These are part of the snakes they were getting. These are the North African viper snakes.
right.
You know, that are used in the.
Yeah, she does go to Libya because she winds up becoming the queen, eventually the Medes and stuff. Like Medea's all over the place. But there's definitely this strong Libyan connection.
And that's what we've been showing in a lot of the videos is the Scythian Levantine connection. You know, in most videos, that's what we're going to point out, you know, is that they were a connected culture. It's like basically the North and South ends of the empire, you know, and this is one of the things they had. So we know they had wormwood, artemisia, absinthe, they had poppies, cannabis, a whole bunch of estrogenic herbs. And supposedly the snake venom is used as well. You know, not just in arrow poisonings, but in different compounds.
Right. This one I find really fascinating because I'm wondering, like, what are they using the venoms for in these kind of procedures? Because it's even described in the Indian side that they're using venoms, you know?
Right. And I don't know, that we talked to the doctor and he says that, basically the snake venoms, it destroys the acetylcholine in the body and it's destroying a lot of these things. And these herbs that are used as a snake bite remedies for it, some of them would seem to be estrogenic at the same time. And so we wonder how is there a possibility?
Maybe it's not a direct connection. Maybe it's just because, like, we know the priestesses are handling snakes and are breeding snakes. Well, also it could be, first of all, we have to always consider that it could be a type of snake that was specially bred to have a more effective poison for this use, or it wouldn't, not even a poison at all, something that people could ingest. But imagine if you're handling and raising snakes, you're going to be getting bit. So they're going to be treating these women with something, you know,
and they get an immunity to it. And you know, the snake bite remedies they're giving them are also build estrogen,
right,
for the women. You know, and so the thing is, using husbandry, you could take that snake and you could breed out the venom. Meaning you could breed down the quality. Instead of making it more powerful, you could take your weakest snakes and crossbreed them back until you have a tame version of this, you know, taming the dragon. And then you could take that in a micro dose, which they're saying they're doing.
That's true.
And the question is, a remedy that works against that, you know, what's happening when it's all in the body at the same time? You're getting a bunch of competing information. It's supposed to do this, but it's supposed to do that, but it's supposed to do that. Well, what happens when that all gets put together? What's the final result? Because it would seem that they're using all these things in conjunction. We just don't know how.
Right. There's something to this. We know that they are doing these gender transformations, and that there's so much interest in this. Like I always think of the Emperor Heliogabalus or Elagabalus.
Yes.
Who throws all of his money and his weight around trying to get the full transition to happen, you know? At least that's the claim by many of his detractors. So there is some doubts there, but I tend to think that, you know, that's where they're going. Because remember, like, Heliogabalus is raised as a child in this priesthood as one of these gender non-conforming priests, you know? So when they become emperor, they just continue doing what they've always done, you know? Right? Now they just have more power, right?
You know, you want to hit the next picture?
Yeah. Oops, here we go. There you are.
Yeah, that's Hesperides.
Right.
That's in Libya.
There's Medea, right?
That's Libya. And that's supposed to be in Libya. And they had a tree there with the golden apples. That was some kind of psychedelic apples, and a snake protected it. And Hercules, as one of his labors, has to go there. Heracles goes there, and he falls asleep and wakes up wrapped up in mycelium. This is after he wrestles with Antinous, though, you know, and has a homoerotic wrestling match with the giant. He can never subdue him. And finally, he when he falls asleep, he wakes up laughing, wrapped up in little mycelium, and he grabs these little elves, he says, in his hands, little creatures like little mushrooms, and he takes them back to Mycenia, to the island there of mushrooms.
Great, yeah.
You know, it's tied in the myth, and here you could see the snake on the tree. And are these golden apples? What are these golden apples? You know, and so Libya was one of the hot points back in ancient times. Now it's just a desert. It's just a desert destroyed.
Right. We got to remember,
like,
right? Carthage, the Carthaginian Empire, with large parts of Libya, you know? So yeah, very powerful center culturally and for all sorts of reasons, you know?
You know, even like Palmyra, where the queen of Palmyra was, Zenobia, ISIS destroyed that a couple years ago. They completely leveled it, the whole temple. You know, they don't. Oh, it was so beautiful. They got rid of all that. You know, so there's so much of this ancient culture that was destroyed originally. First, it was destroyed by the Rome. Well, see, Romans and Greeks incorporated with them, but then later, you know, different cultures would destroy them. It's the Christian cultures, and then Islam made sure, like, no idols, no images, no nothing. We didn't want to see it. There is no ancient history.
Yeah, it gets worse and worse, right?
You know,
can't have that cognitive dissonance. Nothing that fits if it doesn't fit my narrative, it's a lie, right?
So let's go to the next picture.
Right.
Here you go. And that's the nymph. You know how to pronounce it? Is it Salamakis? Is that how you say her name? You know, I
that's
mispronounced
correct.
everything.
Salamakis.
And she falls in love with Hermaphroditus. And, you know, that's part of the myth. It's a famous myth. And in Turkey, they got something that's called the Fountain of Salamakis. And different Greek authors said that if you drink from this water fountain of Salamakis, it effeminizes you.
Wow, that's interesting. So for those who don't know, the story of Salamakis is he gazes into a magic pool and then he sees a nymph who transforms him into a woman, you know? And there's more to it, but that's the essence, right? What we're getting at here. So they're saying they have probably that pool of water that transformed him.
Well, yeah, Salamakis, I know, is a nymph that falls in love with the Hermaphroditus and wants to everybody wants to capture everyone else in ancient myths. You know, you fall in love with them, you got to have them. That mania, that you know, it's this feeling of you got. It's like a drug. They believe that love was like a drug in ancient times, and so supposedly, and this is in Turkey, modern times Turkey, where this would be at. There's a fountain that men could drink from that would turn them into women.
Wow.
You know, this is the Hermaphrodites fountain of the nymph. You know, that's how we're leaving the episode with that. If you can find it, you know, people talk about searching for the fountain of youth, or the fountain
I would like
of
to
life.
find this fountain, you know.
Yeah, this is a different fountain.
Yeah.
The fountain of femininity.
That's interesting. Wow. So to end off then, okay, so we're seeing all of these, you know, within the rites of the mother goddess, we're seeing that they're having these gender transitions going in both direction. You know, you're seeing all of these drugs that are used to treat both menopause and birthing issues, and also increase estrogen. You know, so like there's this deep connection going on here between these rites of effeminization and the rights of women and these priestesses. You know, both trans and natural women. It's powerful stuff.
Yep. You know, and so if you liked anything that you saw, smash up the like button, hit the bell, the notifications, put some comments, you know, tell your peoples, you know, share this information. We're just trying to share some of the fun legends of ancient times, you know, a different perspective on things.
Yeah, we're trying to give everyone that anthropological view, and so that we can understand, you know, and when we're looking at something like trans people, you know, gender diversity has always existed. And it's important that we explore this across history so we can understand where we're actually coming from and what people are actually doing, and not just, you know, get sucked into the rhetoric. you know. But yeah, we're going to keep going on with this topic next week, probably. And we're also, in a few hours, going to be joined by our good friend Wretch, as well as special guests Ammon from Lady Babylon and Neil from Gnostic Informant for our regular Witches Symposium, where we're going to go even more deep into androgyny in the ancient world. You know, so that's going to be a lot of fun. And like, come with your questions, come with your ideas, because you're going to have access to Ammon. He wrote a book about this stuff, about gynomorphs and androgyny and hermaphrodites, you know. Go check that out. You can find it on Amazon. Also, Wretch, our good friend, is currently writing his volume 2 of comparative mythology. And a major section of that is examining all of these gender nonconforming people across history and across various cultures. And he goes far more in depth than we could ever do here. You know? So
Yeah.
yeah, this has been a lot of fun. And like Dion said, like and subscribe. You know, the algorithm is kind of against this topic, so we need your support, you know. So we love you guys so much, and we'll see you in a few hours. Take care.